saying share my screen, photos, iCloud. No, I'm sorry, I'm not able to share my screen for some reason. Uh, Anjani, is it possible for somebody else to share a screen while I talk?
Um, yes, it is possible. You can talk and other can share your screen.
Okay, Anjani has my presentation. I'm going to request Anjani, so he's going to run the presentation. I'm going to work with him in tandem. Anjani, is it possible for you to do that, please?
Yes, I'm on it.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen, Masood?
Yes, I can see.
Yes, I can see. Yeah, you just need to put it in the PowerPoint mode. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Yeah, the topic for today is adapt. And the reason why I have chosen the topic to speak on adapt is because the world is changing around us at a very fast pace. And things what we were used to doing, the way we were used to doing, not necessarily the same which we are expected to do today, and we should be doing it in the near times to come. And the idea of using this picture was there is a standard procedure when you want to break fruits from a tree. You typically climb a tree and then you pluck your fruits. But here you can see that the tree is a dwarfed tree, but still the person is following the standard operating procedure of climbing a tree and breaking. The idea of sharing this is to say that, because things around us are changing, we should adapt to what the scenario is. We do not necessarily have to hold on to what we have been used to in the past, because everything around us is changing and will change. We have to observe what's happening around us, adapt ourselves, and move forward. So that's the reason I've chosen this picture, and that's the basic theme for today is adapt. Masood, as you said, I need to introduce myself. Yes, I will introduce myself a little bit. Anjani, the next slide, please. That's my COVID look, but I think I'm looking better here because of COVID. Without COVID, I look worse. So I've been in the IT and telecom space for over 30 years. I've been associated with organizations like ICL, Fujitsu, Sprint, Reliance. I've been associated with technologies like mainframe computers, mini computers. Have been responsible for launching various product categories into the Indian subcontinent, like email, mobile services, uh, in fact, even personal computers when they were launched in India and way back in 87, 88 as well. So yes, I've been around in IT and telecom sector, and now I've been associated with Legrand. Legrand acquired Raritan, and I've been with them for over 14 years. And with Raritan / Legrand, one has been more focused on the data center space for the past decade and a half. That's a little bit about me, and my email address is shared with all of you. If anybody does want to sign in a comment or have any questions thereafter you want to communicate, I am easily available, and those are my coordinates for getting in touch with me. Next slide, please. Bangladesh is going through, I mean, the Bangladesh has got Vision 2021. And if you look at the mobile connections and what's happening over there, what has been projected from 2017 to 2025, there's been a massive growth which is projected, especially if you want to look at all the categories. You'll expect it to go from 85 million to 107 million, with a 60% penetration rate on unique mobile subscribers. When you want to look at internet subscribers, the growth is pretty fast at 10% CAGR, and we are looking at 73 million. Telephone connections today are already in excess of 145 million, projection 190 million. Smartphones, 45 to 138. In mobile broadband, from 29% to 82%. The green circles which you see, which have been highlighted over here, are basically highlighting that Bangladesh is today sitting on the cusp of a digital revolution. In the next 3 to 5 years are very critical in terms of how Bangladesh adopts its digital technologies, how people get used to it. But what is expected is that as people get internet connectivity on their mobile phones, there is definitely expecting, we are expecting some kind of a change in consumer behavior, and we're expecting some kind of a digital revolution. And to some extent, it will lead to what we call a digital disruption, which has already happened in most of the markets. And it's going to happen in Bangladesh as well. If you look at some of the digital disruptions which have happened in the past, when you look at the 1990s, there was the music became digital, photography became digital, and today one of the most famous companies of the past years, like Kodak, Kodak does not exist anymore as in the digital space or the photography space. 2010 saw a huge shift in print and the TV side, the travel side. Everything became digital. The way we were traveling, the bookings, hotel bookings, airline bookings, etc., all became pretty much digital. The print also started moving towards the digital platforms. Look at the past 5 years, most of the sectors have followed in terms of adoption of the digital technology. The banking, healthcare, automotive, etc., all of them have been following this. And from here onwards, pretty much everything we do, how we do, is going to be digital. So, excuse me. So the question we need to ask ourselves at this stage is, in this era of digital revolution and digital disruption, how do I leverage my resources? What is it that I need to do to be able to take advantage of this changing environment around me? Because if we do not adapt to what's changing around us, we might as well be extinct. So the idea is to be able to understand what's happened around us and move forward. Next, please. Now, this is a slide which I'm very passionate about, and I use this slide quite frequently from multiple points of view. The point of view which I'm going to share today is, if you see, Anjali, you might as well press all the tabs on this, maybe 3 or 4. If you see in this picture, there is one lady who's actually watching what is happening in an event, and everybody around that lady is capturing the moment. Now that's what's happening and that's what's also going to happen when you see the internet and the mobile connections and the internet usage on the mobile connectivity increase. This is going to be the behavior. As people use phones for capturing the moment, it is going to generate what we call a digital transformation in the consumer behavior. And this digital transformation is going to be followed by companies trying to understand what the consumer is going through. And this is why I say in my earlier slide that the Bangladesh is on the cusp of digital revolution. People will change behavior, and companies will need to adapt themselves to how their how their customers are behaving. And this kind of behavior is obviously leading to more data generation because you're capturing photos, sharing photos, making videos, watching news, watching entertainment. Everything is going to be pretty much what's happening on your mobiles. And as you're generating more and more data, obviously we are leading to more data centers uh, across the region. And obviously with specifics to the Bangladesh market, you will have data centers coming in far more geographical territories than just 3 or 4 key locations today. Next, please. Now, what's happening here is this is what I call consumers. Their behavior is changing at the speed of technology because technology is changing and they are adapting themselves. Today, we started using phones for messaging largely and voice calls. Tomorrow, we will have tools like WhatsApp. It's pretty popular in some places. China uses Line, WeChat, Taiwan, and stuff. They use Line. So you will have other mediums of social communication, Facebook, etc. And as they get used to new technology, even online e-commerce services will happen. Uh, and consumers' behavior will change as to how they're doing. And COVID has been one primary example as to how we've changed in terms of e-commerce, education, entertainment, etc. Now, when consumers are changing and adapting themselves to changing technology, the business has no choice but to change at the speed of consumer. Now, if the business is not changing at the speed of consumer, you're losing out your customer. And if you're losing out your customer, you're pretty much losing out on the business. So businesses have been forced or will be forced uh, to change at the speed of consumers. And how does business adapt itself? The business adapts itself by changing the IT which it is using slash technology it is using at the speed of business. And as IT and technology changes, consumers change uh, further. So this kind of it's a cycle. Anjani, you want to press the tab once again? Yes. So this is what I call the cycle of change. This cycle of change depends upon the speed of human behavior, adopting new technologies and services. And this is only going to become faster and faster and faster. And we have to be very mindful of that. So because of this, what's going to happen is one, yes, next, please. Everything will become customer centric. I mean, today we have viewed businesses of what product I want to launch, what service I want to launch, who are my target consumers. But right now, everything is going to be where is my customer? What does my customer want? When does he want it? So the customer is defining the new WWW. So he is defining what I want, where I want, when I want. And the businesses will be forced uh, to adapt and adopt themselves to what the customer is demanding. And in a true sense, you will have what we call an empowered customer who is going to be very, who's going to be very demanding. And there will be no loyalty to any brand or company or service because the customer will know, thanks to digital evolution, that he can switch from one service to another pretty much seamlessly. So the organizations will have to be very careful on what the customer experiences they're giving uh, for their customers in terms of the digital experience, digital enhancements. Next, please. And as customers and consumers start using more data, the data centers will follow where the customers are or where the data is being generated. Uh, what I expect is that as we start moving into condominiums, and condominiums, you will have what you call connected houses. Everybody would have, more than 5 or 7 or 10 devices in a house which would be connected. You are generating a lot of data from each house, and if you're staying in a condominium, each condominium is generating lots of data. So you will have data centers or smaller, let's say, computer rooms, which are there to manage the data being generated at the condominiums. Since a large part of the data will be generated through mobility, the cell towers themselves would also have to be equipped to be able to generate excess amount of data volumes and traffic. So each cell towers would also have micro data centers or computer racks to manage the data which is being generated. Now, in this evolutionary phase where the things are pretty dynamic, the data centers therefore have to be scalable very quickly. I mean, it's not that the data centers today are not scalable, but they'll have to be scalable pretty fast. Today, if we want to plan an expansion of a data center, we may take 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years. No, you will have to be ready to scale up in, let's say, 3 to 6 months, because that's how the fast the customer behavior is going to be changed. Your design has to be flexible in terms of if you've been used to something, you may need to quickly deploy something else. The tools and technologies you should be allow you to enable you to do that. Transparency is pretty important because your customers, whether they're the end customers or you're in the colo space or etc., you have to be pretty transparent as to how you're operating to gain the customer confidence. And obviously, speed and security cannot be compromised with all these changes taking place at this point of time. Now, if you go back in the data center, I would say about 20 years back, whatever data centers, or earlier they were called computer rooms, etc., or EDP rooms, electronic data processing rooms. Yeah, that was the term used at that point of time, EDP rooms. The foundation on which the data centers were built was called business continuity, which meant that as a CIO or a CTO or EDP manager, I had to ensure that whatever happens, my business should continue, which means that if I'm doing payroll processing at that point of time, or if I'm doing inventory manage at that point of time, if my computers crashed or etc., I had spare capacity. So they built in spare capacity in to ensure that the business always continued. So that was the foundation stone on which the data centers were built about 20 years ago. As data centers became more connected, we got the threats of hackers coming into play. Security became a pillar on which data centers were resting themselves on. And that still continues to be very a strong pillar and a critical pillar in all data centers today, and moving forward will continue to be so. But parallelly, what was happening is the amount of money which people were spending in terms of trying to upgrade or scale their data centers, add new technologies, was not easily available. I mean, all of you who've been running data centers or in data center space will realize every time you go back and ask for more money from the management, etc., the money is never available. If you ask for 100, you will get 50 or maybe 40 or 60. So you'll always get less than what you ask. So the third pillar which came up was the pillar of efficiency. So people started deploying technologies which make their data centers more efficient in terms of trying to see how efficient can the cooling be, how efficient can you utilize the space, how efficiently can you utilize the servers or the compute capacities. So that became the third pillar as we move through time. However, while these three pillars continue to be uh, pretty much valid today also, the only other criteria which I'm putting forward is that all this rest on a larger base of adaptability. Now, data centers have to be adaptable, both in terms of, as I mentioned in my previous slide, they have to be scalable, they have to be flexible, but they have to be adaptable in terms of how the business demands are changing, and the business demands are changing based on where the customer is going. So the phrase which I use, or which we use as an organization, are data centers that will last are the ones which are built for change. If you are too rigid in your design, if you are too rigid in the technologies which you are using, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to be able to have a data center which will be serving your customers' needs. And typically what we have seen is on-premise data centers. So if an organization has its own in-house private data center, a part of the data center will move towards the cloud. A part will go towards what we call the micro data centers, or towards the edge. And a part of it will remain itself. So in this change or in this scenario of uh, uh, how do we make data centers more adaptable at a very high level, we are looking at only two things which we should be doing or should need to do. One is to observe, and the thing is adapt based on our observation. And as Charles Darwin has said very clearly, it's the ability of the species uh, which can adapt, which will ensure their survival. So let's deep dive a little more into what do I mean by saying what do we need to observe and how do we adapt. Next slide, please. Observe. First, changing behavior. I've spoken about this a little in the earlier side. The human behavior is changing, and we need to see what they are using, what technologies they are using, how they are using, where they are using. Is the data which they are generating is from static or is it multiple locations? Is the data being generated in different hotspots, data hotspots which are coming in? So that has to be constantly observed. You have to observe your infrastructure, what is deployed in your data center, computer rooms in real time. Gone are the days when we used to do monthly or half yearly audits. You need to know what's happening in your data center here and now at every second. Because if you're missing out on some critical alarms, you are pretty much calling for disasters. Uh, Everything nowadays in data center is IP enabled, and as you become more connected, there is always a greater threat to security. So you have to watch out, build in your necessary security checks, firewalls, etc. for that. Uh, and as we move to connectivity, your UPSs are becoming IP enabled. Your storage devices are becoming IP enabled. Your cooling services are becoming IP enabled. The important thing to understand is while we look at firewalls and etc. purely on the computer side or on the server side of the business, sometimes we do not tend we tend to miss out on what are the other connected devices. And I even say printers, because if your organization, you've got 100, 200, 500 people, everybody is connected on a network, and that network is the same network which your data center is using. And if your printer is also, which printers are obviously on central network devices, these devices can become points of threat on security. And so you need to observe the behavior of these devices as well. A printer is supposed to only print and not do something else. So if a printer is trying to do something else, or is even requesting for a certain command within the system, within the network, then you know it's not its normal behavior. So you've got to watch out for these small changes in the behavior of the connected devices as well, because any change in behavior is a potential threat uh, on the security side when you become more vulnerable, which leads to the next point of all the IT devices on the network uh, need to be monitored very closely. And finally, in the observation side, we have to look at the gap in the skill sets. Because the technology is changing so fast, uh, and we are deploying new technologies, the skill sets of my team, if they are not changing, uh, or if I'm not having the people with the right skills fast enough, and the environment around me is changing in technologies, and I or my team cannot adapt it or change, then I am creating problems for myself. So we need to also observe the gap in the skill sets which are needed and which are there. So training, upgrading of skills is constantly something which has to be on the cards. So that's pretty much on what we need to do on the observation side. And how do we adapt? Uh, there are multiple things we need to do on the adapt portfolio. First, we need to optimize. You have to take out the cost of out of operations. The operational costs are pretty high on when you run a data center. One of the biggest costs, for example, are your power costs, and power costs are pretty much split between the cooling and the power which is used to run the compute side or the servers. And servers pretty much account for nearly 50% of the power consumption in a data center, and cooling does about 42%. So you have to observe as the behavior of these devices, because if you're not observing how your servers are behaving, how their Are they underutilized? Are they overutilized? You are unnecessarily wasting power. And if you are wasting power, you are unnecessarily creating hotspots and therefore wasting cooling. So yes, it is a little expensive in the beginning to spend a little more money trying to build these tools and technologies to observe. You may not feel the need that, oh, I don't need it. I can go and monitor my power consumption at the rack level or at the aisle level, row level, or even at the data center level. It does not help, because more often than not, what's been observed is that in a data center, for example, uh, most of the servers are underutilized. They are pretty much utilized anywhere between 30% to 40% CPU utilization, whereas a server can easily operate at 70, 75% before you need to add more compute capacity. So you will have ideal compute capacities which are being underutilized. And if they're underutilized and they are still consuming more power with just by operating unoptimally. So you've got to understand the device behavior, power consumption behavior. We've talked about security on the infrastructure side on the IoT. You have to keep changing your processes in terms of the new regulations which are coming into play. Every country pretty much now has its regulations in terms of how the data, its own country's data needs to be managed, moved around. Most countries today do not allow the country-specific data to be taken outside its own country, and there could be other regulatory changes which could enforce or force you to be able to incorporate them into your data processing in your data processing functionalities. So you have to be able to be flexible enough to keep adapting or adopting yourself to the new regulations which are coming in. One has to deploy technologies which improve the efficiencies. I did speak about optimizing power consumption. Another thing which is very important is the cost of reality space. I mean, space is the biggest cost when you set up a data center in the beginning. Once you've spent money on it, you pretty much forget, okay, it's gone and sunk, and you try and focus on more operating costs per se. But the fact of the matter is, what we've seen and observed over a period of time is that most data centers, for example, are designed to take in, for example, when you build a rack with about 1,000 kilograms of load-bearing capacity, and they're designed to have about 5 to 7 kilowatts power factor load per rack. And the third thing, how the design of a data center rack is done is you have single phase power coming into a rack, which is fine. And so far it has been good. But because the servers are going to get more intensive in terms of their ability to process more, the servers, so their power consumptions are definitely going to increase. And today we are looking at racks for 48U. How do you save the cost of reality is by increasing the height of the racks. You can go from 42U to 48, 48 to 52U. So you're increasing vertically in height. To do that, you're adding more power. So you have to provision not for 4, 5, 7 kilowatts of power per rack. You have to provision for at least 13 to 15 kilowatts, which means you need to plan and design for a 3-phase power to the rack, not single phase. You have intelligent PDUs, you have power distribution units, which will take in a 3-phase and give you an output of a single phase. So that's how you save space. In the existing space, you incorporate a rack not of 1,000 kilograms in load-bearing capacity. You incorporate a rack of 1,500 kilograms load-bearing capacity, incorporate 3-phase power to the rack. You incorporate higher racks. That's how you save space. But to be able to do that, you have to plan much in advance. You can do it at a later stage, but the discomfort, inconvenience, and the costs are higher at a later stage than today. Sure, you may be spending a little more today, but in the long term, it's going to save you immensely because the average life of a data center is anywhere between 7 to 10 years. And once you set up a data center between 3 to 5 years, you will realize that you will need to spend more money. And if you spend money down the line, you will then spend far more than trying to make these corrections. Whenever you're running a data center, there are routine tasks which we have to do in terms of scheduling database backups, file systems, etc. The choice is either you do it manually at a periodic time, every month, every quarter. But if you are able to automate the routine tasks with tools like workload automation, etc., this frees up your uh, manpower managing the data center to do other productive stuff. Routine tasks should constantly be automated to be enable to drive more efficiencies out of your team. Next. Uh, yeah, this is what I mentioned initially, is that infrastructure has to be scalable, uh, flexible, and speed of deployment. I mean, you have to, because the rate of change of human behavior is changing exponentially, and we will have to uh, adapt itself to that. Uh, in optimally utilize realty power IT equipment, we've talked about that already. You have to have tools and applications and services which enhance the customer experience. So this is pretty uh, critical in terms of uh, how to be able to build relationship with customers in a digital era. At the end of the day, a business grows if its customers are happy. A business grows if its customers are referring other customers to you. More often than not, what's happening today is we move from analog to digital technology, and we move it from our point of view and not the customer's point of view. Uh, the customer experience is pretty uh, bad. Forget about being, when I say that it's not happy, etc. Uh, and if your experience on it's the customer experience on your digital platform is not good, you will lose your customers. And there's no point changing to a new digital platform or new technology when you're doing so at the cost of your customer experience. So one very strong suggestion which I would like to make here is when the IT people are uh, making this transition from their traditional ways of interacting or engaging with the customer and using digital technologies. Sure, as technical people, IT people, you are the masters of technology and you know what tools to deploy. But please involve your marketing teams, because your marketing teams are the best people who understand customer behavior in terms of what they want, what they don't want. Please do not try and build applications and services which you think are good from the technical perspective or technological perspective point of view, which may theoretically be so, but if that technological perspective is not good enough, then and the customer experience is bad, then you're pretty much wasting your time, effort, and money, and maybe even costing your business. So, whatever tools, applications, and services you deploy or build, please involve your marketing teams and understand what your customer wants, how the customer is going to use it. So please do that. And one final thing is, which I mentioned before already, is that you must always constantly monitor your infrastructure in real time. If you're not doing it in real time, uh, you are set up for disaster, pretty much. Now, this is a section for which I get paid, and so I have to talk. So I will talk. Legrand as a group, we as specialists in electrical and digital building infrastructures, you've got more than 37,000 employees, and we pretty much operate in all markets. Turnover was about 6 billion euros, and we have, given the fact that data centers is now pretty much what everything else will revolve around, and everything is becoming connected, whether you have homes, offices, people, it's a connected world we're going to live in. So for the past 5-7 years, Legrand has made huge steps and inroads into working and moving into the data center space. And as a part of that process, uh, we've got some very good companies in our portfolio. Next, please. So if you're looking at, so there are two ways to, grow. Either you build technologies yourself, or you acquire companies which are specialists in their own space. So over the past few years, Legrand has been acquiring companies, and obviously at the rate at which the data center business is growing globally, it makes sense to do that. And some of the companies which are now part of the portfolio are Cablefill, which is into cable manager. That's one of the world leaders on that. You've got Raritan and Servitech, which are the leaders in terms of intelligent power distribution PDUs. You've got Starline, which is one of the world leaders in data center space and busbar technology. Winkles is a European brand, which is Winkles is a European brand which is known for its very premium quality racks, rack designs, and organizations like Colt, Equinix, etc. They consistently use Winkles. And Legrand has been there in multiple other categories and racks as well, in terms of end racks, transformers, UPSs. One of the Italian brands, Bori, is also part of the UPS family, part of the Legrand family. So the point which I'm trying to highlight is that today Legrand is pretty much a specialist in the white space area of the data center. And if you look at the kind of solutions we have in and around racks, because we believe rack is the centerpiece of a data center, and everything around it, connected to it, inside it, has to be has to be of the best. So if you look at the products and services which we offer, these are some of the products and brands and services which we are offering, and which will be available to the customers of Bangladesh as well from our side. We're happy to say that. Next. The important thing to note is that the four values on which Legrand has built itself. One is innovation. Most of our products, pretty much all of them, are designed from the customer point of view. For example, when we look at now structured cabling solutions, we've got two less connectors which go into our design. When you're doing cable management solutions, again over there, you can modify and twist and turn without any welding required in a data center space, because that becomes more cumbersome, more risky. It's just snip and turn. It's very easy deployment, both in terms of deployment and management. All our products are pretty much designed from the point of view of speed of deployment and speed of maintenance. As an organization, we are very strong and committed to ethical behavior. We are very transparent in what we do. We are very, very customer centric in terms of we want to be able to respond to the customer needs, requests as fast as possible, both in terms of response side and as well also, as I said earlier, in the innovation side, the design side. And we strongly believe in resource optimization, because at the end of the day, this is the resources, whether it is the human resources or the infrastructure resources. The idea is that we should be able to optimize them. And which is why, as the Legrand Data Solutions, I mean, if you see on the top right side, we've got Legrand Data Center Solutions. Our products and services enable our customers to be more flexible, more agile. So they are designed for agility. So that's pretty much about us. And a small food for thought before I sign off is, I mean, there is existing technology which most of the customers use today. You get new technology, but the fact is you add technology to a bad process only gives you a faster bad process. So fix the process first before you deploy new technology. That's pretty much from my side. And coming back to the key message which I had given earlier, data centers that will last are the ones which will be built for change. Happy to take questions at this stage. Thank you. And thank you, Masood, for allowing me for this opportunity to speak at this forum. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay. And yes, we have few hand raised. We can go for questions and answer session directly. Okay. Imran bhai, you can ask your questions. You are mute. You have to unmute.
Thank you so much. My only question regarding respect of Bangladesh, especially we are not going to any integrated solution, especially the rack related. Most of the cases we are using the individual rack and all the power equipment and server equipment. What about the fast supply system to integrate with the rack system?
Sorry, I lost you in between. You said you are not using integrated solutions in Bangladesh. After that, I pretty much lost you. Can you repeat that part, please?
So, what about the fast suppression system solution integrate with the fast rack system?
Those solutions are available today. If you want to look at integrating fire detection and fire suppression systems, yes, they are available today. I mean, if that is the question you're answering, is it available today? Yes, they are available and can be integrated. They are deployable. If you need more information, you can reach out to me and I'll ask one of my team members to, guide you and help you more on that. But that is available today. We can we work with you on that, something on those lines.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm more interested. Can you contact with me?
Yes, if I'm not wrong, actually, Imran by question is in-rack fire suppression system, correct?
Yes.
Yes, the system is available in the market. Yes.
It is available.
So,
any other question?
Or I got one offline question, so or I can go.
Yes, please.
Yes. So the question is how the adoption happening in across the globe. Can you please tell us something about the global perspectives?
Okay, that's a very big question. Okay, so I mean, as I mentioned briefly in my speech earlier, is you have to plan for tomorrow and not for today. And when I'm saying you have to plan for tomorrow is, as I said, today we are looking at not 42U racks, people are looking at 52U racks. It's very important. So when you're building a new data center and when you're looking at a load bearing capacity of, let's say, we've been used to 800 kilograms or 1000 kilograms, you switch to 1500 from day one, which means it's not only the rack which is taking care of that, the floor, which is the tiles also need to be able to take that. So we are looking at about 9 square meters, which is taking into that place. So everybody is trying to do that. You are having high compute capacities coming into play. The average power consumption from a rack, which was 3.4 or 3.5 kilowatts, is already touching 7, 8 now. And some of the larger organizations are already doing 12 to 15 kilowatts per rack. So in terms of their design, they are working on those lines where they are equipping themselves not for today, but for tomorrow. That's one. Two, it depends as to what level of customer you are talking to. Now, for example, when we look at the hyperscalers, when you look at the big guys, the Microsoft, Amazon, Googles, and all those of the world, their rack design is completely different because of the equipment they use. And some of these organizations are even using 40, 50 kilowatts per rack in terms of power consumption. In terms of adaptability, to answer your question, they are building in redundancy in the infrastructure side. If you look at the colos today, people call up and say, hey, can you give us 100 racks in the next 6 weeks, 4 weeks? And they want 100 racks up and ready, but their infrastructure is ready. So the 100 racks have to go, the PDUs have to go, everything has to be plug and play. So in terms of standardization, they have pretty much standardized on their design, what they want, how they're going to run. Their tools and processes are pretty much fixed. So if you're running one data center or multiple data center, it is matter of replication of your tools and processes, systems and processes, so that when you're expanding from one location to another, or let's say even when you're moving towards the edge, while the size of data center may be small, but if the systems and processes are the same, then the speed of deployment becomes very quick. People are trained, there's no new technology, there's no new system and process which is coming into play. Everything is a plug and play for them. So A, it's standardization, but which is very well thought through. B, it's building redundancy in the infrastructure which is there. So that's how they are doing it.
Okay. So next question is, what are the parameters? Like in data center, in Bangladesh actually, most of the data center they are doing in brownfield, not greenfield. That means the architectural part also not okay. So 47U or 48U rack is quite impossible for here due to height. So what is the advice in terms of architectural part, in terms of electrical part, mechanical part, and telecommunication part? That means this is the 4 key architecture or 4 key point or key factor for building up in a new data center. So what is your advice for that actually, for adoption?
I think Bangladesh is at the right place at the right time, and I think it's very lucky to be in the position which Bangladesh is. While for the past 5-7 years, the rest of the world has tried and experimented with various technologies and corrected themselves. Bangladesh does not have to do all of it themselves. Bangladesh can definitely learn from what the world has been doing and where they are moving towards. So your question is a brilliant question in terms of what they should be doing. I mean, I obviously cannot answer it in one straight say that this is what you need to be doing. We can discuss this more offline, and we can work with you on this, and so that we can come back on each of the aspects you've talked about. But the broader suggestion, which we've observed from most of the global deployments, and as I mentioned just a little while ago, is they have pretty much standardized on their systems and processes. This is how we will work, because it makes it easier for them to be able to do rapid deployments. They're very clear how they want to do it. Uh, so in terms of standardization of systems and processes, that's very one. Two, when you look at the infrastructure you are building in, as I said, it has to be scalable and flexible. If you look at data centers, for example, data centers, you had raised flooring with cooling coming in from below the floor, and you had electrical wires coming in below the floor. That has pretty much gone out of the window. You only bring in air coming in from below the floor, and you use a bus bar at the top. Now, the bus bar at the top with tap-off drop boxes gives you flexibility in your design tomorrow. So if you have 100 racks, but if you want to make it into 70 racks, or you want to increase it and change the layout, if you're not using bus bars with drop-off boxes, you are pretty much stuck. Then you have to break the whole floor into it. So you have to build that element of flexibility in your infrastructure to be able to adapt for what is coming tomorrow. Sure, bus bar will turn out to be a little more expensive than the traditional way of cabling under the floor. And people sometimes compromise on that. But 2 to 3 or 5 years down the line, the cost of that additional money which is being put today will pay off for itself. Today, if you look at it, people take, as I said, single phase to the rack. A single phase running one phase of copper cables is cheaper than running a 3-phase cable to a rack. But when you look at the cost savings in the long term, you will save far more. So when you are building a data center from scratch, you have to look at the ROI over a life cycle of the data center, and not in the next 2 to 3 years. You may say, okay, my business will give me X amount of money and I will expend Y today. But you have to look at it not 2 to 3 years. You have to look at over the 7 to 10 year horizon and say, because if I invest X today, Y tomorrow, Z day after, if you look at the total investments over 10 years, that's how you need to look at. You may spend a little more, but you'll save a lot more in the long term.
Yes. The floor is open, so others also can ask the questions. Pradeep, you want to ask any questions?
Thank you, Masud. No, not required.
Okay, so another question in my mind, actually, a lot of people are discussing that, okay, AI is coming and a lot of people will lose the job. So because of data center operation, in terms of operation, a lot of things are going on. So what is your thought about that, actually, Sanjay?
No, that is okay. So that is a constant question which we face, but we have to go back in time. You see, if you go back in time, farming was done manually before the industrial revolution came in, and now you have tools and tractors which are there. Agricultural output has improved. Money, there is more money, and the industrial revolution has come in. Sure, there are some people who've moved away from the traditional farming to the industry side, to the corporate side, which is happened. If you look at when the computers came into our life, we used to have what we call typists. We used to write a lot of messages on typists, and computers came in. So people have changed and upgraded their skills. It's the same keyboard. It's just that somebody is processing differently. So typists have become data center operators, data operators, data managers. So AI is not going to take away the jobs. AI is another application which will force people to acquire newer skill sets. So it's not that it takes jobs away. Now, for example, when you are looking at intelligent cars, for example, it's not taking anybody's job. It's just that it is enhancing the experience and providing a better service. Okay, so that's what it is doing. Sure, there will be a short window in which when the transition period happens, people may see that they are losing their jobs because of deployment of a new technology or AI come into play. But that's a very short window of 6 months to a couple of years, depending upon how fast it takes. But that's the transition period. People will change, uh, which is why, and I think it's a good question, keeping the topic of adapt in mind, because people will also have to adopt new skills to be able to change themselves and be more acceptable. But if you stick towards and say, hey, no, I am doing only this and I will not adapt or change myself, then you are pretty much calling for trouble. I mean, the ability to adapt is not only true for organizations, it's also true for individuals as well. We also have to change. But will it, in the short term, and if you ask in the say, if will it take away jobs? No, it's not going to change or take away jobs. People with newer skill sets will be required. So you have to upgrade yourselves to take that part.
Yes, and now a lot of people are talking about cloud actually, and they're thinking that gradually enterprise data center will be die and everyone will move to cloud or colo. So, what is the adoption happening in other countries about that?
Okay. Uh, it's okay, it is going to happen, which is true. What you're saying is true. That is the observation. The traditional on-premise data center will, part of it will go to the cloud, and part of it, which is like if you were looking at the financial industry or the banks or whatever, they will not share the critical data or the applications which the core part they will keep with themselves. A part of it they will move to the cloud. So the original data center will get split into two parts at least, a part of it with themselves, a part into the cloud. And in some cases, banks, if they want to open data centers in the remote locations, then it will go to the edge. So the original data center will get into split into three parts. We'll go to the edge, we'll go to the cloud, and the own on-premise will become small. Now, the rate of adoption, if you look at it, uh, the growth of on-premise data centers has been about, I'm typically looking at Europe and US, is down to about 3.4 to 3.6%. But when you look at the growth of cloud and services, the cloud is growing at the rate of 8%. So yes, the cloud is growing faster, and there will come a time when the on-premise or private data centers will remain flat, and it will move, a large part of it move to the cloud. And again, a large part of it will move to the cloud largely because everybody is realizing that uh, the core business is doing good in terms of what it is supposed to be doing. Managing a data center, uh, its operations, its challenges, is a different skill set altogether. And as I've mentioned, that you have to have a data center infrastructure which is more flexible and scalable quickly. It becomes more meaningful and logical for a cloud or a colo kind of an environment where the challenges are more aggregated and everybody is doing it themselves. So it's more cost effective, economical to go to colos or cloud in the long term. Yes, it does make sense. So that is definitely going to be on the rise. Sure.
Yeah. So Sanjay, from my side, my last question is regarding the adoption of edge computer or micro data center, because everyone is asking talking about the production should be data center should be close to the production. So what is the adoption happening about the edge or micro or micro data center?
Oh, okay. Now, okay. First of all, let me clarify. Uh, Edge data center, people have different understanding of it. An edge data center is a very relative term. For example, let's look at Amazon. Amazon started its web services on e-commerce portal largely out of US. As uh, the world became more aware and started using these services, and independent country regulations come into play. So Amazon has moved away or has opened its data centers, not only in US, has opened data centers in Europe, has opened its data centers in Asia. Now, data centers in Asia, Europe are smaller than the ones which have come up in US. Now, Amazon data centers, even for example, in India, it's a large data center, or the way that they were planning to build is a very large. But if you look at the concept, the data center in India of Amazon is an edge data center for Amazon from its original point of view, because it has moved closer to the customer. So it is a very relative term. Edge does not necessarily mean a single rack in a remote location. So it is moving to the customer, as you rightly said. You are moving data centers towards your customer. So depending upon what business you are in, the nature and size of your edge data center will change. Now, if you're looking at a banking sector, now banking sector operates in larger cities, but when you want to go to a rural place, then you will have a one rack data center or a one rack solution for its small uh, farmers and villagers, multiple areas. So that will become the edge kind of a data center in terms of for a banking application. So to answer your question, what is the adoption of Edge? So Edge has been adopted uh, in its form, the way you've defined it as moving to the data center. But the way I understand your question is when you're looking at micro data centers specifically. Okay, so now the concept of micro data centers is, while people are talking about it, it's when I say people like the vendors like us and other players in the space. They have developed a product or a solution, a service called micro data center. Its adoption is largely dependent upon the ability of the business and the industry to see how they can maximize the benefit of an edge data center. And the decision of adopting an edge data center or micro data center is not the IT manager. Now, if you go to if a company which has got a chain of retail stores, okay, it's got 100 stores in Bangladesh across multiple locations. Now, the decision to adopt the micro data center is not the CIO, CTOs only. Then the business head, sales head will also come into discussion as to what is the benefit that small piece of rack is going to do in my outlet out over there. So it's a business decision with a technology decision coming into play. And today, I believe that the business side is not involved as much in the application side of the micro data center. So the adoption is very slow. While technically the IT managers, CIOs are available, they are understanding it, but the vendors are talking not to the business people, the vendors are talking only to the IT people. For it to grow faster, the business side also needs to be educated, informed. Then we can see a faster adoption. But at this stage, the adoption of micro data centers is very, very small.
Yes, thank